So I'm Phoebe from Hilton Homes. We're a property portfolio specialist. So the long and short of it is we specialise in landlords that have diversified their portfolio. So a little bit about me. I started in property when I was 18 for a large independent estate and letting agents based in Portsmouth. I've then worked for another small independent and a corporate as well. So I've seen quite a variety of different agents, how they work and their policies and procedures. I am also a landlady myself, so I understand the stresses that landlords and landladies go through within their properties. I've been in the industry for 6 years, but obviously I've had quite a lot of experience over that period. So about Hilton Homes, as I said, we specialise in portfolio management. We only started in January 2023, so it's just been over a year. We like to focus on residential. We look at commercial, but I'm not too experienced in the commercial field, so I like to stick with what I know. The reason I started Hilton Homes was because I had seen the way letting agents run their portfolios, their staff, and for me it wasn't always the best way to deal with it. Customers, landlords, tenants didn't exactly get the good experience that they deserve. With letting agents, as I see that goes wrong is the management side. So agents are so focused on getting the fees in. It's an easy ride once you've got a nice management portfolio. You've got that money coming in consistently every month, provided that tenants are paying their rent on time. So once the money comes in, they haven't got to worry about anything else. The main four that I'm going to speak about today are single lets, HMOs, serviced accommodation and property development. So with single lets, they were always the easy, basic way if you wanted to be a landlord, i.e. you would purchase a property, rent it out, whether it be friends, family, through an agent. Consistently, you'd have that income coming in, pay your mortgage, it would be your pension once your mortgage was cleared, i.e. when we didn't have things like we had state pension, but private pensions, etc. Personally, for me, I'm seeing a lot of landlords getting out of the single let market. They're concentrating on maximising their portfolio. So whether that be they convert it into a HMO or they look at doing serviced accommodation just because they get a better income from it over the year. So HMOs, also known as co-living, especially in Portsmouth, I don't know about anybody else, but has everyone seen quite a rise in the rooms available at the moment and HMOs being converted across the board? Yeah. Southsea obviously was always renowned for students, but now North End, a lot of investors from up north, all over the country really, world as well actually, are now buying properties at auction for say 200 grand and then converting them into it could be a 3-bed for example, converting it into a 7-bed all-en-suite HMO and then renting all the rooms out. But when they purchase it for 200,000 for example, they will then remortgage it on a commercial mortgage. So they get a commercial valuation, which is generally about 600, 650. So they're pulling all that equity out, which then means that they can invest it further with other properties. So I don't know if many of you know, Portsmouth Council introduced a new licensing procedure for HMOs and also with Section 257s. So I don't know if many of you know, in Portsmouth, a lot of the properties were converted into 2 flats or it was a big house, 4 flats. For example, if you've got my situation, I own the freehold. I've got a ground floor flat and a top floor flat, and they're both rented out. But the top floor, there's one single lady on her own, and the ground floor, there's a couple that are married. In that scenario, I don't need a Section 257, but if in the scenario it was a couple living upstairs that weren't married, unrelated, and there was another couple downstairs, again, not married, unrelated, so same scenario, I would need a Section 257, which then dips you into the HMO rules and regulations. So you have to apply for licences, it all gets very complicated. So if you're looking at buying anything like that, make sure you do your homework on it. And then there's serviced accommodation. So I mean, for me, I started a service accommodation management business alongside Hilton Homes with Ben, who's just sat here. We call it Check-In. So we specialise in the management of serviced accommodation. And for me, that opened my eyes at a completely different market, completely different income. Generally with a HMO or a single let, you're looking at a per month income, whereas serviced accommodation, you've got to look at it on a per annum basis, just for the lows and the highs throughout the year of your income. So a lot of landlords, so I've got quite a few single lets that I manage, and a lot of landlords have come to me since in the last 6 months, year, and said, oh, what are the price difference? How much more am I going to receive per year compared to what I do as a single let? Which is quite interesting really, because especially if you're not relying on that income each month, you can afford for the highs and lows of the income coming in. So there's a lot of landlords that are now turning to service accommodation, but obviously the government are picking up on that, i.e. in October, they are now introducing further fire regulations, so you need fire risk assessments, smoke alarms in each room. There's a lot more legislation behind it. Over the last year, I've noticed a lot of people are starting agents from doing courses, but they haven't got the experience within the industry. And not just like, i.e. sources, people that are starting, they're saying they're HMO specialists. They haven't got the experience, they haven't dealt with them day in, day out for another company. So they've basically set it up off doing a course online. So if a tenant doesn't pay their rent, they might know the education behind it, but they might not be able to problem solve their way out of the situation. And that's quite important for me, because I think at the end of the day, it's not my money, but it's the landlord's money, and I've got to keep that landlord happy. And also, eventually, I'm not getting my management fee if a tenant isn't paying rent. So it's quite a knock-on effect for you not managing the property properly. And yeah, there's a lot of builders out there as well. No one in particular. Especially, you might see online at the moment, there's certain people that are saying they specialise in buying property and then converting them into a HMO. They basically take a fee of 40 to 60 grand, and that's not included within your refurb costs, your licensing costs, anything like that. And they are just taking it just for the fun of it, and then they will leave your property a shell. So they'll do some of the work, but not all of it. They're not getting building control in, they're not following the proper procedures that are in place. So it's really important that you do your due diligence, please, because I pick up after so many people that haven't done the paperwork properly, haven't done it all right from the get-go, and that's so important. Any questions?
Cool. So you were saying that a lot of people have moved into service accommodation, so let's call it an Airbnb.
Yeah.
Right, okay, so an Airbnb, what's, from your perspective, the biggest risks with doing that?
You have got to take the highs with the lows. Some months you'll earn £500, other months you may earn £5,000. It really just depends. It's for people that aren't relying on the income as a financial commitment, i.e. if you've not got a mortgage or you can afford to pay the mortgage without the income coming in. That's the main thing. I mean, we get the odd person that doesn't look after the property or using it for other reasons, i.e. drug dealing, prostitutes, the list is endless. That they tend to use it. So you do have to bear in mind that on the odd occasion it will be, right, they're checking out at 10 and we've got to check in at 3. We've got to get this work done within that period. It's a small space of time, but you pay a premium to get that work done. So you've got to bear that in mind as well.
Okay, the second one I come back as well, and it was about, you talked about agents not having experience with HMOs, and can you say a little bit about the different responsibilities that you have as an HMO owner or versus a residential property owner, and why you need a proper managing agent, I think they're called. Tell us about that.
So generally, comparing a single let to a HMO, you need your licence, which is given to you by the council. It's a very long document, application form that you need to fill out. There's smoke detectors. You've got to check them monthly, that they're all working, not just in the bedroom, communal areas as well as the bedrooms. There's the fire safety lighting. There's a lot more in HMOs, not with the management, i.e. making sure people are getting on, down to somebody might not be looking after the shared bathroom for whatever reason. So it's within HMO management, you have to nip things in the bud very quickly. You can't brush it under the carpet, it's probably the better phrase. You can't brush things under the carpet and think, actually, oh, if I forget about that, it will go away eventually. It doesn't, and actually the problem will then double, triple, and actually start upsetting other tenants within a property. Does that answer your question? Yeah. That's okay.
I just wanted to add what you were saying, that many times people living in HMOs, they are like first-time tenants, and many times you need to babysit, if I say it correct, because my light bulb stopped working, and all of these aspects that they don't know how to manage themselves being on their own for the first time and all of that. So that's extra job as well on the top of.
Yeah, I mean, for example, today I had a tenant report, my shower's not working. Right, okay, well, the shower's not working. Is the hot water not working? Is the cold water not working? Is the water actually coming out of the shower? Need to give me a little bit of an insight as to what the issue is, and it is babysitting, because you have to ask then a range of questions to get the answer. So, yes.
I've got a question. So, with the stuff that I was talking about with regards to the labour market loosening and services inflation and that sort of stuff, have you seen any sort of effect on businesses or how people may run their businesses, for example, contractors?
Yeah.
Is there any issues that you're sort of seeing with them that might stem from these sort of things?
Yeah, so probably the best, so for example, in June 2019, there was a tenant fee ban, you might have seen it in the news, and basically meant that agents and landlords couldn't charge tenant fees to tenants. So generally, if you're a couple moving into a flat, you might pay between £500 to £900 in tenant fees, which that was, as an agent, that was my commission. Like, that's what I made my money off it. We had the basic salary, but once that went in 2019, immediately landlords started getting hit with higher fees. So on a move-in like that, the landlord would probably pay a £100 setup fee. You're now looking at minimum £300, which again, agents aren't picking up all the money that they were receiving before in tenant fees, but they're then putting up their management fees. They won't take a property on if it's tenant find only, because they're not getting that consistent income over the year afterwards. So there's a lot to consider, but I think since June 2019, that's been the biggest hit in the letting agent industry. As well, for example, a couple of years ago, if a washing machine broke down, I could call an appliance engineer, they'd come out and have a look at it. They wouldn't charge you a thing. Now they want a £50 call-out fee. I mean, it might be because the tenant's not turned it on the plug, for example. It's so many simple things. Yeah. So, but yeah, generally across the board, I mean, call-out fees are going up, but so salaries, petrol, all these things you've got to take into consideration. So yeah, no, definitely increased.
Cool. And HMO additional licensing, are you seeing, is that affecting the HMO market in any kind of way?
Yes, it's pushed a lot of the 4 beds out of the market. So generally within a HMO, if a lot of your student properties would be a 4 bed. So you could buy a property in Portsmouth, you'd have 2 bedrooms upstairs, and then you'd have a lounge and a dining room. So you could, as a student landlord, you would rent each room out and then have a bigger kitchen living space. So since Article 4's come in and the stricter licensing conditions, we are seeing quite a drop of 4 beds, which is what HMOs are always renowned for. They were renowned for that lower, people with the lower incomes that are on benefits that couldn't afford a place on their own, that needed that basic amount each month to go out. They didn't have to bother about utility bills or anything. And unfortunately, where they're pushing 4 beds out the market, or there's a 6 bed, but the room measurements are slightly smaller, again, that was updated with the licensing as of the 1st of December, it's had quite a knock-on effect. And actually now landlords are obviously buying properties and converting them and having the nice big 7-bed houses with the en-suites, but they're now not fulfilling the lower class, which is what HMOs were initially designed for. So if that answers your question, yeah.
Any more?
So basically, if you've got most landlords, you're like one point of call, aren't you? So a lot of landlords, like I have in the past, I've had a few buy-to-lets I've bought with one agent and they've managed that for me. Maybe a HMO, you've tried to self-manage, and then SAs with another management company, because they all do different things. So you're basically offering one point of call, one person they can call with issues for any number of types of properties. Is that right?
Yeah, exactly. So generally, if you had a portfolio of 2 buy-to-lets, 2 HMOs, 3 serviced accommodation, you would have one point of contact throughout your whole portfolio. So whether it was a maintenance issue or it was receiving payments, that one person would deal with everything from start to finish. So if you did have 3 different types of properties, you have 3 different types of management companies, plus if they're in different locations, as a letting agent, you're then looking at 2 different branch managers, 2 different letters managers, 2 different negotiators. It's a lot more people, and especially when communication isn't the best anymore, it definitely lacks, as Alice is smiling at me. So yeah, that's the main selling point for Hilton Homes.
Serviced accommodation, so with all the changes that are happening and will happen, do you think it's still a good idea to get into it now?
Yes, I do. I think you need to look at the areas carefully that you're looking to invest in. Generally speaking, where I live in Chichester, I get to see quite a variation, i.e. Goodwood in Chichester, for example, any Goodwood events, it skyrockets. So what you would get for Victorious Weekend in Portsmouth is what happens in Chichester for Goodwood. And Goodwood have obviously a lot of events over a year. So there's still opportunities. And in a way, yes, it's better to get into it now if you're going to do it, just because the government are looking at making service accommodation licensable. But they do speculate that if you already use a property as service accommodation, they will automatically allow it. But don't quote me on that, because it's the government. So, yeah.
So you're looking at a situation where you could, if you own a property that's already an SA, add quite drastic value because it will automatically get type of grandfather rights like HMOs did when they brought in the Article 4. So I think if you can get the right mortgage product on it and you can get it up and running before that legislation comes in, it's a really good opportunity to make some really good capital appreciation.
I think that's a really, really interesting point, and I think that there's a bit of a moral question as well in all of this, and that is that fundamentally HMO legislation, right, is there to safeguard people.